It's 7 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to our interpreter, Mr. Mejia, to talk about how folks can access the translation services first.
Bueno, ya son las 7 de la noche, entonces ya vamos a empezar. Los que deseen interpretación, al pie de la pantalla van a encontrar el icono de un globo terrestre. Ustedes pueden apretar sobre ese icono y escoger la opción del idioma que les interese, sea inglés o español. Ustedes van a poder ver la presentación de las personas que la dan, pero la escucharían en español si así lo desean. Si no, opten por el inglés y la escucharán en el idioma original de inglés.
Thank you, Mr. Mejia. My name is Philip Lynch. I'm the Director of Special Education Services, and I'm going to take a moment to first introduce the co-chairs. And so I'm going to throw it over to Victoria first to introduce herself, and then we'll see if Amy can introduce herself to the group.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everybody, and thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Vittoria Iello, and I have one child in special education. She's in 6th grade. I also would like to take this chance to remind everybody if you have any questions or concerns, to please reach out to us. You can find our emails, the co-chairs emails, on the SECAC website. Thank you, everybody.
Amy?
Hi, my name's Amy Bloom. It's nice to see all of you. We have 2 boys. Our younger one is in 3rd grade at Bethesda Elementary, and we have a 6th grader at Westland with a learning disability and ADHD. So we are learning to navigate a very different system from the elementary school. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. And I actually have to go for about 2 minutes to check on the kids, but I will be back. I'll see everyone in just a minute. Oh, and Connie is here. Hi,
We
Connie.
do see Connie, and we completely understand you needing to check on the kids. So I'm going to turn it over to Connie and let her introduce herself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Connie. I'm being part of the SECAC since my child was started special education. I have a child with autism. He's 10 years old, and I have a daughter that is currently in general education. She's in 2nd grade. Welcome to any families. If you are here and you're new and this is your first meeting, welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, but hopefully we'll get to see you more every month. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie, for being part of the welcoming committee. It is always great to have new families and also returning families. So what I'm going to do is go through the agenda. We will then see if there are any takers for public comment. If there are new folks, I can talk a little about what public comment is and what it represents. And then we can, from there, jump into our presentations. I have a few updates that are not on the agenda, and we want to hear a little bit from Mary Beth Matsuranis, who is our parent engagement liaison. Although I think I'm saying the title wrong, but Mary Beth, you'll get it right for me. I'm still getting used to the titles. So Mary Beth will give you the appropriate title, and we will introduce her, and she's going to share a few words. We introduced her actually at our last meeting, which was great, but she's going to say a few words about some of the work that she's undertaking this year. And then we will introduce Winter Bingham if she's here, and I'll check to see if Winter is on there. There she is. I see her. Hi, Winter. And so we'll give you a chance, if you're okay, Winter, to say hello as well when we get to that place. And then we'll launch into our presentation. Our topic tonight is focused primarily around transition services, and we're going to hear from a couple representatives from our transition services unit, Margie Parrott, and who's actually she's listed on the agenda as an instructional specialist, but she is now our acting supervisor for transition services. And so she is following in the footsteps of Simone Guinness, who has taken a different position in the system. And so this is Margie's first week taking on this role officially acting, but she has been working in that capacity for the last few weeks. So we will introduce her, and you're going to hear from an instructional specialist that works under her unit, Diane Flood, as well, and the wonderful work that they've been doing. And then we will launch into our parent networking. I expect that we'll have approximately 30 minutes for the parent networking piece. We will have 3 breakout rooms. We will have a breakout room, as we always do, for our presenters, where you can engage in more of a back and forth dialogue if you have questions. That'll give you an opportunity to answer to get those questions answered without really interrupting the flow of the presentation. So I would ask that you hold your questions. We will take a brief break to answer some questions that are in the chat if there are some, but just know if you're tempted to put something in the chat, you will have an opportunity later on to speak with them face to face in the breakout room. I will be in a breakout room for anybody who would like to speak with me for whatever reason. And we also will have our co-chairs in a breakout room for anybody who would like to talk to them about future topics or anything else that you are more comfortable speaking with them about. We always are looking for your input regarding our topics. And so feel free to share anything that's on your front burner with them. I see that Connie has her hand up. So Connie, you want to share some information?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I accidentally did that by mistake.
Oh, you know what? That's not your hand. That was my cursor that I had over your on your square. And if for some reason my cursor looked like a little glove. So that was funny. All right. So still getting used to Zoom here. So co-chairs, have you heard from any parents regarding public comment? Okay, and I will just do a quick reminder that public comment can be something that is a celebration where you're recognizing somebody publicly that you would like to maybe see spread across the system, something that somebody is doing well within a program or a service that they may be providing your student or students at the school that you would like to see shared with other schools and spread throughout. Or it can be something that is a more of a challenge or a concern that you're facing that you may be trying to head off, and you would like to try to share your experience with others so that we can address it in a more systematic approach throughout the system, as opposed to just addressing it with your singular experience. We always ask in public comment, and also anytime you're sharing in the breakout rooms or otherwise, that you try to maintain a level of confidentiality regarding your student and other children. Please refrain from specific staff members' names and that type of information that that may be inappropriate to share in a public setting. So we look for problem solving that is systemic in this setting, and so we know that you speak from your own experiences, but try to share information in a way that's going to be helpful and beneficial to the whole group. So let's move forward then. And Derek, you want to throw up the presentation?
And Mr. Lynch, a parent has requested that she could have a public comment. And so if you would like, let me know when you're ready and I can introduce her.
Okay, and so if this is a parent that has not shared that public comment with the co-chairs in advance, which is typically what we ask folks to do, and you can always do that by emailing the co-chairs. Their email addresses are on our webpage. If you just go in and put SECAC in the search engine, it'll bring up that webpage, and it's pretty easy to find. And it has a quick way for you to email them if you are interested in public comment. If you're somebody who's making public comment this evening without having contacted them, you're welcome to do that. I would just ask that you keep it within roughly 3 to 4 minutes, and that you follow the guidance that I gave you around confidentiality, or making sure that it's shared in a way that is respectful and does not share specific names. So go ahead, Jen, if you want to introduce the person, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So Susan, would you like to come off mic and share your testimony, your public comment?
Yeah, so I had two children that were part of this. My son, who has gone through MCPS, who's now 22, he was part of an autism program. Now I have a daughter who has gone through several years trying to, I guess we went through a lot of struggles, but we have now been a part of, there's an SECAC program. So parents who are struggling, I guess if your child has any type of social, emotional problems, anything psychological or things like that. We were really looking for something that would support her and my daughter, who is also a very vocal person, but wasn't getting, I guess, what she really needed. We don't have social with children problems necessarily. We were having some, I guess, more issues with getting the supports she needed and that was supposed to be getting, I guess, within by the staff members and things. And she really needed kind of hand holding to begin with. And I know there's a lot of struggles within the schools right now because supports are minimum and just there's a lot going on. But I wanted to say, so we've moved to Northwest High School and I have to applaud the staff members at Northwest. They are fabulous. Their SECS program are absolutely phenomenal. They strive to, go above and beyond there. I've actually never, being a part of MCPS, like for almost 50 years myself, I've never, though I know that school's not that old, I've never heard anything necessarily bad about the school. I've never really heard anything about the school. So obviously, it holds its own. But this program, since she's been there, has had absolute full support. And I can honestly say, if you are looking, if a child of yours or you hear of parents and you think a child needs support in any way, in an emotional way, any schools that hold these programs, it's a fabulous way to go because they have mainstreaming programs. She can be in their program if she needs, time away from other people. So it's like a program within a program or outside of a program as well. And I just have to, say congratulations for these separate things that they have provided. It's like every year there seems to be a new program that they add for things. And this is one that I am definitely so thankful for and we are blessed to have. So anybody that's a part of this school or programs, or, you haven't heard of one and you think you might need one, look into these programs. It's built into, I know the Bridge program is part of one, which is more of extensive one. And then there's another one also that I know has even more supports than this one. So I think this is like the first tier of it with the less holds of it. And it's fabulous. I was crying when I first thought about it. And we were actually thinking about moving from MCPS schools, to be honest with you, even though we know about it. And so I have to say it is fabulous. Mr. Lynch actually knows us as a family. So you know how much it is for us to be like, yes, we are so thankful for this and just to be getting back on track. So my daughter was actually out of school for 4 years. And so her to be back, first day of school, she was in there all day and has been there every day since then. We might have a rough start here and there, but she's been in school every single day. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing that story. And that's really meaningful given the amount of time that your daughter was out of school. And so we really appreciate you recognizing that program that stands for social emotional, as Jen put in the chat, social emotional special education services. We don't necessarily think about them as tiers, but we have, each of our programs and services, does have some differences to them in terms of what they provide. So students with different types of needs are appropriate, through that IEP meeting process for different programs and services. And, Susan mentioned the SESES program, and she also mentioned the Bridge program, which supports students who have different types of needs. And then she referred to a third one. There's a program called Extended Social Emotional Support Services, which also provides a certain level of support and service to students. They all have their own unique characteristics. And one of the things we have done in the past and that we can do in the future is also bring back Dr. Ives, who is the supervisor for those programs, if that's something that folks are interested in, to talk about those services at more length, so folks are more aware of what's out there within the system. So when you engage in dialogue at the IEP table, you have a better familiarity with those services. But thank you so much for recognizing that. I know I said not to use folks' names, but the resource teacher or their department chair there, Joe Vukovic, is a huge support and leader for that program. So that's a shout out to him, and I'll let him and Dr. Ives know that that you were sharing their or singing their praises this evening. So the other thing I didn't say about public comment is the advantage of sharing in advance is you can share your contact information. Sometimes I can follow up right away on some items, and sometimes I need to do some research. And so I also need to be able to get back to you by email or phone. So it's also helpful if we have that information so that I can get back to folks and respond after looking into whatever it is that you're talking about. So we're going to go ahead and launch into our presentation at this point. So next slide there. So we met the SECAC co-chairs. We're going to hear about transition services, and then we're going to take care of our networking. One of our outcomes that is not listed here is that we're going to hear a few words from Mary Beth Matsuranis, and we're going to meet Winter Bingham, who is also in a new position in MCPS. So let's go ahead and take it to the next slide. This is a quick reminder. I just have a few announcements before we launch into those other agenda items. We ask that as many folks as possible join us, which is on something that has become an annual event, which is when our superintendent is with us. I will say, and I've said this in the past, but I want to remind folks, this was not always the case. We did not always have a superintendent who was interested in or available to meet with the parents of MCPS students with disabilities. And that sounds a little crazy, but it was not always the case. And I don't want to take it for granted that we have had many years running now where we have a superintendent who is willing and able to make themselves available to you on this night, and specifically just to this group. And so Dr. McKnight will be with us on the 14th. It will be a virtual meeting. In part, we're working with her schedule. We do hope to have a hybrid meeting where we can get a chance to see each other face to face, as long as things are going well from a health metric standpoint. And that meeting that's hybrid, we're hoping for in the spring, and we're looking to do that in April. And so we're going to ease our way into that, and we'll take it one step at a time and make sure that things are looking okay at that time. But right now, that's the plan, to do a hybrid meeting in April. So put on your calendar the 14th, and that will be virtual with Dr. McKnight, and she will share with you her vision and how her vision aligns with the vision for the Office of Special Education, and what her priorities are for us as a school system. Next slide. So at this moment, I want to turn it over to Mary Beth, who, like I said, we introduced last month, and she's going to say a few words about her position and the work that she's doing. So Mary Beth, you want to jump on?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As Phil said, my name is Mary Beth Matsuranis. I'm the new Family Support Services Coordinator for MCPS, and the primary goal of my position is to support families to be active participants in your children's special education journey. So my goal is to hopefully achieve that through workshops, some consultations, and providing information on community resources and events. I know that if you're looking at the slide right now, you'll see that my cell phone number is there. You are welcome to write that down. It's also on the webpage if you go to that top link. The phone is so that I can be in touch with all of you, so feel free to use it. To give you a little bit of information about me, I was a classroom teacher for 20 years, 10 of them as a special educator. And then I supported teachers as a consulting teacher. And then I spent the last 8 years as an administrator. And I was most recently the very, very proud principal of Weller Road Elementary School. And I retired in July so that I could spend a little bit more time with my mom. But this position speaks to me because I love the idea of providing support for people and that developing those relationships. And so the goal of the position is to establish those relationships. And hopefully through the next slide, we'll be able to really start building those relationships. Derek or whomever, if you can, yeah. So this is the first part is that there's breaking news. We're having our special education fair, which was formerly known as the Summit, is happening on April the 29th at Gaithersburg High School. So please mark your calendars now. There will be much more to come on that topic, but we have sort of locked in the date and the location. So we want to make sure that you all are aware of that. We also are looking at what workshops we can provide. And of course, that requires finding staff who can also give that information, much like you're getting tonight through the transition unit. So one of the first things I'd like to do is spend time in December with drop-in meetings, which I think would probably grow to become like a coffee and conversations time. But with the goal being that you all can come when it's convenient. We can have some conversations around things that are working for you and maybe areas of need so that we can plan appropriate workshops and trainings to support you and your child. And then in January, we're having, we just firmed this one up today, actually. We're having someone from the rec department come to present about the summer camp options that will be available. So the recreation guide is coming out the first week of January, and registration is the second week. So she's going to come right in the middle of that time, and she's going to share the programs that are available and then provide like 40 minutes of opportunity for you all to ask questions and to figure out which programs would be best for your child. And then we're also going to run a series on the IEP. And that's mainly because there was a lot of conversation in the parent voice data for the MSCE survey that said that sometimes parents don't understand everything that happens at a meeting, or that they have questions about goals. And so the goal of that workshop will really be to highlight some of those areas of need. Sorry, I'm rushing because I know I have a limited time. I'm also trying, this is truth speaking, to send out a bulletin on a biweekly basis that'll give you some information about community events that are happening like with outside agencies. For an example, there's a Young Athletes at Home program that's sponsored by the Special Olympics that starts in December, a future planning workshop by the ARC, and a mindfulness and ADHD online workshop in December. So I'm going to put all that together and that will also out to all of you. So I'm rushing. My goal is to be available and responsive to all of you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you. And I think Winter probably wants to say something.
Yes, and I just wanted to thank Mary Beth and say, Mary Beth is, you know, we look at her services. I like to use the term navigator, where, you know, she can help because she, you know, we're so lucky to have somebody who's been in the system for so long and has played so many different roles and played the role of a principal, which means that she knows how to connect with all the different various players and offices. So she's in a unique, she's uniquely situated to be able to help parents really, you know, navigate the system and to put you in touch with the right resources, whether those be something online or something on paper or human resources. So please access her and her supports as a way to help navigate the system. I see something in the chat about IEP meetings being stressful. You know, we have resources that can help parents navigate IEP meetings, and we have different resources for different types of IEP meetings. So I would say that if you're not sure where those are, or you need help walking through those with just a friendly face or a friendly ear, Mary Beth would be happy to do that for you. So at this point, I want to give Winter an opportunity to introduce herself and her new position and say a few words about her role and how she is going to be helping be a support to parents and families as well within MCPS.
So thank you, Mr. Lynch, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so super happy to be here tonight. I am Dr. Winter Bingham. I am the new Special Education Liaison in the Office of the Deputy Superintendent, and that's Dr. Patrick Murphy. My job is to solely work and support families through the IEP process to navigate those systems and those protocols to have a better understanding to meet the needs of their unique family. And so I'm working very directly, and those, we would say those eventful situations where you need an advocate or maybe additional information or insight, really to navigate that process. And so I am working with Mary Beth. It's been such a wonderful ride so far. We are probably about 4 to 5 weeks in this new position. And we have tag teamed some of the tasks that she did a wonderful job unpacking for you tonight. We're looking at a newsletter, and so you'll get that from me quarterly. Just to give you information about the external partners, the community organizations, and some of the events and school events and celebrations, and I guess highlights. So families know exactly what's out there in MCPS and you get a greater, I guess, detailed insight of what we're doing as a district. The other thing is I'm partnering with the professional development and really looking at advocacy for parents, building stronger advocates. So you are actively involved and engaged in the IEP meetings. You understand the roles and responsibilities and the primary purpose of a meeting, how to ask those meaningful questions and how to navigate that process successfully. And then I am partnering and collaborating on the resource fair, which I'm so happy to hear about. That's great breaking news tonight. Very excited about that. And we are collaborating to ensure that you have a showcase of those wonderful community partners, supports, and services in our district that really help the unique needs of your family. So we're doing some great things. We hit the ground running, very excited to be here. So you know I'm coming from Blair as the assistant principal under the proud principal, Renee Johnson. And I was at Gaithersburg High School as the resource teacher of special education for about 6 years. And so I'm very happy and thank you for taking the opportunity to introduce me tonight. And I look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, Winter. And so just so folks have a little clearer understanding, so Winter is, as she said, she works out of the superintendent's or the deputy superintendent's office. And we often have families who look to the superintendent and the Board of Education and others for support with special education challenges and needs. And so Winter will be helping us navigate those issues and be a liaison between that office and our Office of Special Education. And so that will be our role. But as she said, you know, we are collaborating with her on many different things. And it's great to have somebody else on board that can help us promote things like our special education community fair and all these other wonderful events. So thank you, Winter. At this point, I want to turn it over to our transition unit so that we can get into the meat of our presentation. It's almost 7:30. So the rest of our evening will look like about an hour dedicated to this presentation. We will take a break in the middle to try to respond to anything we see in the chat. But for those of you who came in late, there will be an opportunity to speak with our presenters when we do our breakout room. So if you feel like it's more appropriate for you to hold off and to ask your question directly to them after the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to do it at that time. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Diane Flood, who's going to be starting first before Margie, and then we'll go from there. Diane.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Diane Flood. I'm the middle school transition liaison for MCPS. I work with all 40 of the middle schools and a number of the elementary schools. I have been at MCPS for, this is my 23rd year, my 15th, I think, year as the middle school liaison. I was in high school before that. So I'm really excited to be here and talk to you guys a little bit about transition. Next slide. So the formal definition of transition is a set of coordinated activities designed for a child with an IEP And those activities focus on improving academic and functional achievement of the child, and they facilitate the child's movement from school to post-school life. Next slide. So transition services are a results-oriented process. So we really take into consideration the student's needs. We really look at their strengths and what their preferences are and what they like to do, their interests. And it's really designed to include instruction, and it involves having related services be part of that. And when appropriate, we are also doing daily living skills, community participation, and vocational and employment experiences. Next. So transition isn't just a one-time thing. It's a process that begins in middle school and then it goes throughout high school. It's collaborative. So we really want the parents to be a part of the process. They're a partner with us in developing the plan and really figuring out what they envision for their child as they're getting older. And obviously the star is always the student. They're the key decision maker. We really want the kids to be part of their IEP, and we want them to be active in the transition process. But there's lots of people that are involved in transition. So obviously the student is the main person, but there's also the case manager. And for those of you that have elementary school kids, your classroom teacher is their case manager. And when they get to middle school, they'll have a specific case manager that will potentially teach them at least one class. So it's a little different than elementary school. And then that continues on in high school as well. We have the content teachers, we have support staff like paraeducators. As they get older, we'll have adult service providers. In high school, there's a career coordinator that's available to all students. And then we have the transition support teacher. So that acronym is TST. And usually you know who that person is because they're running around. They're usually the one that's running all over the place. Transition support teachers are in every single high school, at least one. Some high schools have more than one, depending on the numbers and the programs, things like that. And obviously the family is super important in the transition process. Next slide. So really, when we start thinking about transition, we start thinking about the big picture. We really want to talk about moving your child from middle school to high school and then high school and beyond. And we think about, you know, where do you see your child in 5 years? And where do you see your child in 10 years and in 20 years? And I know that that seems crazy to start thinking about your kid as an adult, but we really want to make sure that while we have this time with your kid in school, that we can really prepare them for life after high school and prepare you for that as well. I mean, it goes very fast. I will tell you, I have 3 adult kids now, and I feel like they were just in kindergarten. So we really want to make sure that you feel comfortable about where your child is going and how they're getting there and what supports that they need throughout the way. Next slide. And in middle school, you can go to the next slide, Derek. In middle school, we just begin the transition process. So transition formally begins when a student is turning 14 during their IEP cycle. So if they're 13 the day of their meeting, they begin to get transition as part of their IEP. So that means that it's typically all the 8th graders, maybe half the 7th graders, and occasionally a 6th grader will be getting transition. So it's not grade-based, it's age-based. Transition, like I said earlier, assists the students in making an effective transition, moving into adult life, into post-school life. And that can include social skills training. We assess their interests and their abilities. It involves self-advocacy and self-determination. Some students are involved in independent living instruction. We do work-based learning experiences, and then we link the families and the students to adult service agencies. Next slide. So each year, before when your child is 14 and then beyond that, each year we will do an interview with your child, a transition interview. It changes every single year. And we really just want to get an idea of how your child learns, what they like, what they don't like, what they do after school, what they hope to do when they're going on to high school and beyond. And we know that they might not know what they want to do right now. A lot of kids will say they, want to be a TikToker or a YouTuber or a professional football player, and that's okay. What we really want them to know is that their interests matter, that they are part of this plan, and that we really want to begin the plan with what they want to do and experience in high school and beyond high school. So each year we're going to do that interview, and in middle school, the middle school staff actually does this with them, their case manager or other people that are in the building, and they get guidance from me, from the transition liaison. When they're in high school, the transition support teacher will be the person to facilitate their transition plan. Next slide. So we really start promoting independence and self-advocacy when they are in middle school, and even before that in elementary school. So like I said earlier, we really like to identify their strengths, have them identify their strengths, what they feel like they're good at, because ultimately when they feel like they're good at something, they're going to succeed, and that can carry over to other areas like academics and community, all of those things. We want them to be able to request accommodations in their classes if they're able to, because when they get to be out of MCPS, they are no longer going to have someone saying, here, you need this. They're going to have to be able to advocate for themselves. We want them to be able to understand their disability or their needs. So how do they learn and what works for them? We want them to learn about their learning style. Are they auditory or tactile? Do they need hands-on activities to make them successful? And we want them to start participating in their IEP meeting. So from the time they're turning 14 on, we will formally invite them to that meeting. They don't have to attend the whole meeting. They can come for part of the meeting, but we really want them to be an active part in this process. We want them to be able to set goals for themselves academically and personally. We want them to be able to access their community. So where's the bus stop? Where will they go grocery shopping? Can they walk to work or to college, or do they need to take an Uber or drive, those type of things? And then as they're getting to be older, we want them to do meaningful student service learning activities. So all students in MCPS can have the ability to do those. And if they're diploma-bound students, they're required to do 75 student service learning hours to graduate. Next slide. So how can I help as the transition liaison for you guys that are in elementary school or middle school? So I can go over what transition services your child may receive as they're getting older, what it will look like for your child as they're getting to be in middle school and high school. I can review the process with you and help you in that planning. I can work with you on applying to adult services and supports. So if you want me to help you do an application for the Developmental Disability Administration, or you need help accessing low intensity support services, things like that, I can help you do that. I also can provide you with resources in the community. I heard Mary Beth and Winter saying that they are going to be doing a lot of that stuff. Every year I update recreation and leisure and summer camp opportunities for kids with disabilities. So right now it's being translated into all multiple languages, but I have this year's in English so far. So every year I do that so that families can see what's out in our community for kids with disabilities, but also general ed camps and after school that are very good at supporting kids that have different needs. Next slide. So then when they move into high school, it really gets real as far as transition is. We're really starting to hit the ground running with transition. The transition support teacher, the TST in high school, supports the families in the transition process and really connects them with those resources as well that they need to be successful after graduation. So those can be resources for college, for work, or in the community. They work with school counselors, case managers, RITSEs, the resource teachers of special ed. Those are the heads of the special ed department. For those of you who are in elementary school and don't know what a RITSE is, they work with the career coordinators at the high school level, teachers, and other staff to create opportunities for the kids so that they have meaningful experiences while in high school, so that they're prepared for life after high school. And then the TSTs also create and coordinate the transition plan on the IEP, and then they create and monitor specific activities that support the transition goals. So when we're looking at what they're going to do after high school, we really start considering what the skills and training and what education they're going to need for life after high school. So we really start back mapping. We kind of look at where you see your child and then what do we need to do to support them right now. We want to identify and apply those appropriate support agencies. Do we need to link you to DDA or the Division of Rehabilitation Services? And if you're confused by all of those, that's what the transition support teacher can do, is to help you kind of maneuver and navigate all those crazy acronyms that are out there. They can help you gather documents for the future colleges or employers or service providers. So we have the ability to access a lot of that stuff so that you don't have to be trying to figure out your latest IEP or psychological, all those type of things. And then they also will determine which activities and supports are needed so that students can really meet their goals and be as independent as they can be moving on. Next slide. So when they're in high school and starting in 9th grade, you know, everybody's nervous, just like when they go into 6th grade, and they're kind of all fresh slate back in the same boat. We give a lot of support. We front load that support. They get a lot of IEP team support. And then as they're moving through high school, we start putting in those other transition pieces: academic, employment, independent living, and activities of daily living. And that can include things like SSL hours, or being part of a club or a recreation and leisure after school, or part of something that's at school. Transportation. So how are they going to get where they want to go? Are they going to get their driver's license? Do they need accommodations in that? How are they going to do that? We can kind of link them with resources that can help them along the way. Do they need metro access? Are they going to take the public transportation? Do they need to be travel trained? All of those type of things come into play as they're getting older, with the hope that as they're exiting MCPS, that we're really using natural supports so that they don't have to go to just one person. They can be in a work setting and go to different people for help, or in college or in the community. Next slide. So there are lots of different options for after high school. It can be post-secondary ed, and that can look different for different kids. So there could be credit-bearing classes. There can also be non-credit classes. University of Maryland has an exciting new program called TERP Succeed, and it's in its 2nd year, and it's doing great. So there's lots of opportunities for kids to go on to post-secondary education. Kids can also go on to work after high school. They might need support with this. So they could be working or volunteering with or without support. And then there can be a combination of that. Maybe they're going to school part-time. Maybe they're going to MC and they're working part-time. So it can look different for different kids. And we really want to make sure that we individualize their experiences and really help them along the way. Next slide. Sorry, I have a terrible cold. So if you notice I'm drinking a lot of water, it's because my voice is going. So now I'll talk a little bit about eligibility and entitlement, and then I will see if you guys have any questions after this piece. But right now, while your child is at MCPS, they are entitled by IDEA for free and appropriate education. So they're entitled to that. You're entitled to your case manager and to your TSP and all those related service providers. You're entitled to that under IDEA. And that can be until your child exits with a diploma or a certificate. It could go all the way up to age 21. So students can be in school with an IEP up until age 21, but sometimes the students will exit ahead of time with a diploma or with a certificate of program completion. Once they exit, then the service will change from IDEA to ADA. So right now they're entitled to those services, and it's funded by the local school system. And then the next slide. Once they exit, those entitled services then move to eligibility. So that means that you need to apply for those services. So you're not entitled to accommodations in college, for example. you have to apply for those services to see if they are eligible to receive those. And you have to meet the criteria for those services, whether that be adult service agencies, Social Security, all those type of things you have to apply for. And then you have to also know, do they have funding for those services? So do the state agencies that we work with, the Behavioral Health Administration or the Department of Division of Rehabilitation Services, do they have funding? So it moved from entitlement to eligibility. And that's a really big jump for families because they've been in the school system for so long. So it's pretty different when you leave MCPS. So now I'm going to take a little breather and see this. I was not looking at the chat, but Phil or Margie, if you were looking at it, does anybody have questions?
Well, first of all, I think, thank you so much, Diane, and then take a little breather. I know that you're, you have to get a drink of water there. I know you're not feeling it. So take a moment, but I have been taking a look at the chat. There's a couple of themes in there. I'll start by addressing one theme that I see. And I think what happens sometimes is when the presenter shares different bits of information, it triggers some thoughts around what folks' experiences are. So there's a theme that I'm very familiar with, which is, the balance between helping to teach students to advocate for themselves while making sure that they're receiving all of the accommodations, supplementary aids and services, and everything that's outlined on their IEP. And so it is a bit of a balancing act, but I want to make it clear that there shouldn't be an expectation that students do not receive their accommodations, I'll just say that, or their supplementary aids and services unless and until they advocate for them. There should be a system in place, especially for our younger learners, that makes it clear to teachers, to all the staff. Usually it's a communication put out by the case manager that is clear to the teachers that are working with that student what the accommodations are, what those supplementary aids and services are that they need within the classroom. And then we do, as students get older, start to work on those, and it is a transition skill to really advocate for yourself, but it really should be systematic in our approach. And I'll share a few strategies, and then if you don't see these types of things happening as your students are getting older, then it's something that you need to really raise first with the case manager, with the school, and then if you need support with that, you have an area supervisor who also can be a support with you. You may have some staff that are maybe a department chair at your school that's new and may not be familiar with some of these strategies. But one of the approaches that we take around self-advocacy is really helping to make sure that students are, I'm trying to think of a better word than armed with, because that doesn't sound all that pleasant, but that they have all the information they need in order to, when they're ready, and if they are able to share that with their teachers. So one of the things, for example, that we've done in the past is have students take a list of their accommodations, and there are different types of accommodations reports that we can run, and we can put it in a discrete place, maybe tape it inside of a notebook or something like that, so that they have access to it on ready-made access to it on a regular basis, and that they can it will help to remind them of all of the different accommodations that they should be availed of, and then that they can share that with their teachers. That said, that's not a replacement for the teachers having that information from the case manager, and it really, the onus is on those teachers. We do expect, as students get older, that they are helping to become advocates for themselves, because that is a skill that we want to teach, and it is a part of that transition process. But the onus really should not be on them, especially as they're younger learners, and students should be provided all of their accommodations, regardless of whether they're in a position to advocate for themselves or not. Teachers and staff need to be aware of that. If you don't see that happening, because I do hear that as a theme, sometimes, especially in high school, folks will say, well, we don't want to embarrass the student and whatnot. And that's true. We need to be discreet about how we provide those accommodations, and we need to be discreet about how we talk to students about them. But at the same time, students are entitled, as Diane said, to those accommodations and supplementary aids and services. So that was a theme I saw. If that's,
And I guess I should have been clearer in that. I didn't mean to say that the not asking doesn't mean they don't get the accommodations. We of course want the students will be provided their accommodations because that's the law, and they will of course be provided their accommodations, but we do really want to work on the student knowing their accommodations and knowing what works for them, so that when they're moving on, that they are able to say, hey, this is what I need to be successful. So I need this specific thing. Doesn't mean they won't get all of their accommodations, they will, but it's good to start practicing knowing, maybe not like physically asking, but knowing what their accommodations are and what works for them, so that when they leave, they're able to really have those as their accommodations in life. Just like I use my glasses or my phone to find out where I am, you know, what school I'm going to, my calendar, those type of things.
and
But
what
yes, that's true.
what we often find, and this is where I really have to appeal to you as parents, is to come to the table with the understanding is that these aren't your accommodations. So things that may work for you may not work for your child. And the approach sometimes that some parents take is that they look at a list of accommodations and say, you know, they think that it's a menu. So we'll take 2 of those, 1 of those, 3 of those, 5 of those. And then we end up with a list of accommodations that many of which may not apply to the student. And so we have to really try to narrow it down to make sure that what we're putting on the IEP that we are obligated to provide is something that we have some sort of data to know that it's going to be helpful. And then we have data to know that it's not helpful. For example, if a student is consistently not accessing that accommodation, even when it continues to be provided, we need you as parents to say, okay, well, that's obviously not working for my child. Even though that might have been something that would have worked great for you or worked great for you or works great for you right now, you as parents have to say, that doesn't seem to be working. I'm going to let that go. We're going to move on and try to really focus on the accommodations that are being used and are being successful. And I say that because oftentimes, and believe me, I'm a parent of a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old. And oftentimes I projected what worked for me onto my children. And I've come to learn, having adult children now, that was not the greatest approach. Different things work for them, and what worked for me may not work for them. So I just give you that little bit of advice if you have younger kids. And it does not help anybody to have a laundry list of accommodations on there, many of which, you know, may or may not be appropriate or able to even be applied if there's too much going on. So just try to hone in on what we have information that will really be helpful. And then when something's not helpful, let it slip away, and we'll put on something else that may be more helpful. And I'm happy if folks want to talk on that front in the director's corner later on. There was a comment, I think I lost track of it. Margie, did you see a comment in there that you might be able to address? There was a question about
4 years.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
So I'll let Margie answer it because she's probably better at that than me because she's at the other end. But I think the question was, when do they discuss if the student is going to get longer than 4 years? Which I can answer too, but if you want to answer, go ahead.
Go for it, Diane.
So every year they will talk about participation and when your child's graduation date is, and it's an IEP team discussion, and you're part of that team and you're part of that discussion. But we try to plan for diploma-bound kids to try to be, you know, go for 4 years, but they don't have to if they can't. So every single year, you're kind of making those judgment calls based on that. If they're working towards a certificate of program completion, we do like them to go through their 21st year for different reasons. Some of those reasons might be the linking to adult services might not happen until that time. We really can work on some of those independence and outside things from 18 to 21. So that might be individualized for their student. But every single year, we are looking at that participation and looking at that whether or not your child's going to need to extend if they're working towards a diploma. So if they're not able to obtain their credits or they need extra, they need to spread that out a little bit, that can be discussed. Usually you're going to start that in 8th grade. They're going to put the graduation date, and then they're going to discuss it every year from that point on. Margie, do you have anything else to add to that?
That's perfect.
I see a question there about what is the equivalent TST for students with 504 plans. 504 plans really have the counselor primarily playing the role of the case manager. So 504s are for students that are not special education eligible students. They're students that are still considered general education students, even though there is something that is impacting a learning area that would have triggered the need for the 504, whether that be medical or something else. But the 504 plan is really driven by or managed by your school counselor. Were there other questions in there, Margie and Diane, that you saw that we want to touch on now before we continue?
I just think someone asked if I would share the summer camps. I do share the summer camps with, it's on our website, but I will try to figure out how to share it to all elementary schools. I do share it to a number of schools that I work in those schools because of different reasons, or I share it with individual parents, but it is on our website. But I can figure out how to share it with younger families as well. I think that was all I saw. If anybody.
And again, if folks I see some wonderful comments in the chat that aren't necessarily questions. If folks want to share that information in the breakout group with other parents or share their thoughts and have more follow-up questions, you can certainly do that in the breakout group. So at this point, we'll move on and I'll turn it over to Margie and she can talk about post-secondary.
Thank you. And thank you all very much for having me this evening. Next slide. So this has been some great conversation about accommodations and eligibility and entitlement. So one of the reasons that we're talking about teaching students to advocate for themselves is because there are these differences between high school and college. And one of the first, the biggest differences there is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. So when your child is in high school in MCPS, you have the right to see their records, and you have the right to have some control over what is disclosed, what's identified. That is your right while they're in school. When your child turns 18, or if they're going to college, your rights, your FERPA rights are gone. So it's really the child has access to their records. So for example, grades. When your child gets grades from their college, you're not going to see those unless your child shows those to you. So that's the biggest difference. When your child's 18, those rights transfer from you to the student. And then documentation. When you're going to college, if you're going to apply for accommodations, you have to have the accommodations, you have to have, or the documentation, you have to have documentation of your disability. And that can be an IEP, that can be a psychological evaluation. And the psychological evaluation, the colleges like to have that within the last 3 years of the student's time within MCPS. So that documentation, the student is going to provide that documentation to a post-secondary institution if they want to access those disability support services. And then disclosure. If you want accommodations in college, the student has to be the one to say, hey, I do have a disability and I need these accommodations. And as Diane was talking about, this is what we're trying to teach your students. Know what your disability is, know what your accommodations are, know what you need to make yourself successful, because you're going to have to talk about that when you get onto a college campus. And then the student-faculty collaboration. Again, if your child does need accommodations, they need to talk to the faculty members. They need to talk to the counselors in the Disability Support Services office and say, this is what I need. And again, we go back to high school and everything in MCPS is that entitlement. And then when they're getting into a post-secondary environment, it's eligibility based. So next slide. And some of the expectations for college students. Students are expected to be able to walk around the campus, to navigate that campus independently. Students are expected to be able to know what time this class starts and how do I get to this building on campus. And the expectation is they attend classes independently. Colleges typically don't allow, if a student has a one-on-one, they typically don't allow someone to attend the class with them to support them. And all students are expected to follow the campus's code of conduct, whatever that looks like. So there are behavioral expectations when you're attending a post-secondary institution. And again, the students are going to be communicating with the instructors, and they're going to be the ones communicating with the staff in the Disability Support Services office. That they want to hear from your child, not from you. Students are expected to problem solve. If something comes up, if a class is canceled or whatever problem could come up, the students are expected to figure that out independently. And as I said, we really try to help students understand their disability and know what kind of support and assistance that they will need on that college campus to be successful in that class. So next slide. And colleges do have disability support services. So that's the office that the student has to apply to. Usually when a student, they register or they apply for a college and they're accepted, then they will register for disability support services. And again, they are the ones that are making this application. They're going to talk to the folks in disability support services and they're telling them what they need. They have to provide the documentation, and that's usually an IEP. Students can go in with the accommodations portion of their IEP and talk to a counselor and say, this is what I need to be successful. And then they'll work with the counselor in disability support services to figure out what accommodations the college can provide. So the accommodations they're looking at them on a case-by-case basis. If the student does qualify for the disability support services, it is very individualized. And the students are giving the counselors the information. They're giving them, as I said, their IEP. And really, again, the counselors are working with the students to stress that self-advocacy and the self-determination. They're working with the students as we are to get them to be able to go into a professor or instructor and say, can I record this lecture? Is there someone in this class that could take notes for me and share the notes with me? So all of this is done. It's all very confidential. The counselors in the Disability Support Services office do give information to the instructors in the classes, but they do maintain that confidentiality. So next slide. These are just some examples of what disability support services can look like. Access to notes. So if a student does have that accommodation, then usually an instructor will maybe, if they have notes for a class, they'll share that with the student, or they could ask another student in the class to take notes and share that with the instructor so the instructor can share that with the students. Students can record classes if that is helpful to them. If there's a testing situation where they're using the Scantron sheets, the student can get that accommodation to write the answers directly in the test. Calculators, captioned media, double time for testing. Some instructors are flexible with attendance, preferential seating, reduced distractions, scribes. These are just a couple of examples of what could potentially be some accommodations through disability support services. Next slide. So here are some examples of what disability support services are not. Altering assignments. The students get a syllabus in the beginning of the semester, and they are expected to adhere to that semester. Instructors are not going to give extra time for an assignment. The student is expected to be able to follow that syllabus and say, okay, I have this assignment that's due in the middle of the semester, so they have to figure out when they should start working on it and manage their time to do so. The accommodations that the students are getting through disability support services are given to them so they can access the curriculum. They're not given to the student to ensure a passing grade in that class. It's really, the law says that they're given these accommodations to access that curriculum. So a student, if they need individualized instruction, they're not automatically going to get that through disability support services. That is something that they would need to use their self-advocacy skills and speak to an instructor and say, hey, I need help with something. There aren't related services in college. Again, unless perhaps an instructor has a teaching assistant that can help all of the students with assignments or some extra help, but there's nothing is guaranteed. There are no tutors. And then again, in college, parents don't get progress reports. Any students don't get progress reports unless they seek that out from their instructor. So next slide. And I just wanted to talk about, there are a couple of local post-secondary options for students with intellectual disabilities. So, and these are some really cool programs. Montgomery College has several programs. They have their challenge program. And this is a program students can actually start taking classes when they're in high school. We do have a couple of our ALO programs that have set students up so they're going to Montgomery College from their school, and they're travel trained usually, and they're taking a challenge class at Montgomery College. Some of the classes are functional in nature. Some of the classes are they're just fun. They have art classes. They have a life skills class. The classes change every semester, but it's a very cool program that is there for students with intellectual disabilities. Montgomery College also has a graduate transition program. And this is a 2-year program at Montgomery College. This is a program that students typically go into. They can go into it at 18 years old. They can go into it at 21 years old. And it's a 2-year program. They have a morning cohort or an afternoon cohort. And the classes are very functional in nature. And again, they're very high interest. And as it says on the website, it's a very unique college experience. It gives students a chance to experience a college campus. They're taking classes. and they're hanging out with a group of friends. This program, they have the classes. They also do a lot of social activities. They try to make time for the group. It's a group of 14 usually, and they might have a social activity on a Friday night. They might go bowling. They might go out for pizza. So it's a very unique program. It's a very cool program at Montgomery College. It is, parents do have to apply for that program. And as I said, it is a tuition-based program. The challenge program is also, there's a fee that you pay for the classes, but the graduate transition program is a tuition-based, credit-free program, and students, when they're done that in that 2 years, they will receive a certificate. And then Montgomery College also has workforce development and continuing education courses. These are open to anyone. This is not specifically for individuals with an intellectual disability. If you are interested in getting certification in becoming a plumber, or getting certified to work in a daycare, or if your child is interested in that, you can take classes through the Workforce Development and Continuing Education Program, and you can get that employment certification for certain areas. We have a lot of students who are really interested in the gaming program, that video game design program that is through the Workforce Development and Continuing Education Program at Montgomery College. That's very popular. And you can start, there are classes there that students can access, and you don't necessarily have to have a diploma to access some of these classes. The workforce development classes are open to anyone. Next slide. And then Diane mentioned this. The University of Maryland has started a program, a TERP Succeed program, and it's similar to the graduate transition program, but it's on the campus of the University of Maryland in College Park. It's an inclusive post-secondary education program, again, to provide students with a college experience. They're taking some academic classes and some non-academic classes. They're focusing on career development, career exploration, and activities, work-based learning. It's a very popular program. It is fairly new. I think they're still in their pilot phase. So they started the program with 2 students, and I know they've expanded. So they're really working on expanding this program to include more students. And then George Mason has the Mason Life program. It's very similar to the TERP Succeed program. The Mason program is a 4-year program, and it is very similar. Again, they are providing adults with a college experience, and they are doing the career development activities, the same academic or non-academic classes, and with and the TERP Succeed program, students can choose to either live on campus or live off campus. And in both TERP Succeed and the Mason Life program, if they're living on campus, the students are expected to have some degree of independence, but they are getting support from other students. They do have different programs of students. I can't remember what program it is, but there are students that are working directly with both of these programs to provide support. They're not going to be able to do one-on-one support, but in a dorm situation, if a student does live in a dorm, the student is paired up with another college student, so they know if there are any issues, if they need help with anything, they can go to this person and say, hey, can you help me out? So it's not necessarily a one-on-one situation, but the students do know who they can go to if they need some support. So next slide. And then there is this very cool website, Think College. And this is specifically for families of students with intellectual disabilities and students. If you're interested in going to college, Think College is a great website to explore. It talks about all different, they have all different kind of resources. What do you need to go to college? They have a part on their website where you can find a program. You put in the state that you're interested in, and it has all of the programs listed in the country that are the programs for students with intellectual disabilities. So this is the example. So you can look for what programs you're interested in any state, and that's the TERP Succeed program. So it's a very cool website to, if you are interested in a post-secondary experience, I suggest you take some time and look at this when you get a chance. It's got a lot of really good information and valuable resources. Next slide.
So Margie, there's a couple questions in the chat.
Sure.
I thought you might want to take a pause and answer some of them. So
Okay.
a couple people have asked about some of the programs that we have out of our office for students that are 14 to 21. I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the partnerships we have with Doors for Pre-ETs, or
That's
and
coming
what
up.
we have. Oh, you are going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those that were asking about specific programs that we have in our office, Margie will talk about that a little bit later. I think that was the only one. There was some discussion about guardianship, and then if you guys stay on, we can kind of address that when it's one-to-one, because that's a pretty hefty topic. So we can do that as well.
So as your child gets older, and Diane referenced this, the transition support teacher is going to assist getting your family and your child into adult services. So we do have some agencies that we work with and partner with specifically. So we partner with the Division of Rehabilitation Services, and that's DOORS. We partner with the Developmental Disability Administration, DDA, and then the Behavioral Health Administration. These are the three main agencies that we refer our students to as they're getting older and as they're getting closer to graduation. Next slide. So before we can do any referrals, before we can talk to any agencies or any partners, we have to get consent. We have to get parent consent. There is a form that the transition support teacher will give all families to get consent. And if you sign that consent, then the transition support teacher can make a referral to an agency. They can talk to the agency, and that consent will also allow us to invite a representative from that agency to the IEP meeting. So this is done typically before the IEP meeting. We'll ask the parent to sign this consent. It's good for a year. So you're going to be seeing that every year in high school. But we have to get that consent, and we have to note that consent on the student's IEP, that yes, we did get that consent, so we can make that referral. Next slide. The biggest agency that we work with is the Division of Rehabilitative Services, DOORS. And this is an agency where we will refer all of our students with an IEP to DOORS. DOORS is all about employment, and they offer programs to folks that want to work. So DOORS will perhaps do some of the things they do career counseling, they do assistive technology accommodations, job trainings. It's all about work. And when the student is in their second to last year of high school, they will refer students to DOORS with consent, and this that referral goes to DOORS, and then their eligibility unit will send that out to the DOORS counselors that we work with in Montgomery County, and DOORS will reach out to the family and set up an appointment for the family to come in and have a meeting, and they'll talk about what you want to do. So again, DOORS is an entitlement. Folks do have to be found eligible, but really just providing documentation of your disability you'll be eligible for DOORS with that. DOORS, we do refer in the junior year because there is a waiting list for DOORS services, and the hope is that if we're referring in the junior year or second to last year of school, that hopefully by the time the student graduates, they'll be able to get into services with DOORS. So next slide. DOORS also has a program, their pre-ETS, or their pre-employment transition services. This is something that we can refer students to in 9th grade when they're 14 years old in 9th grade. These are services that the student is going to access in high school. And so as long as the student is in an educational program in school, in other words, and that could be if a student was attending Montgomery College, that counts. So from ages 14 to 22, the student can be referred to the pre-employment transition services. And really what they're looking at for this program, it's job exploration, work-based learning, counseling opportunities, workplace readiness, and instruction and self-advocacy. DOORS has different vendors and contractors that they work with. And so part of these pre-ETS services are done with those contractors. And there may be a program that the student can access that's after school. There may be a program that a student could access during the summer. It really depends on what the vendor, what the contractor with DOORS has to offer. And when the family meets with the DOORS counselor and they talk about, yes, I'm interested in these pre-ETS services, the DOORS counselor will talk about what options are available. And I think someone has a hand up.
If we're at this time, Margie, we're gonna not open it up to folks coming off mic, but there's a great conversation happening in the chat that I think it will carry over. And I would love for folks to make some of that comment in the breakout session so that you guys can chime in, because it looks like there's some parents that have some wonderful experience and parents who are having difficulty with DDA representation, those types of things. So I know you have a ton of experience around that. Yeah. So maybe you can take a look at that as you guys enter into your breakout session, so you can help clarify some things for folks. But if folks are have a question that they feel they want to address through dialogue, you guys can just hang on for a few minutes and we'll put you in the breakout room and you can share that information with that group.
Okay, thank you. So next slide. Another agency that we partner with, the Developmental Disabilities Administration, DDA. So these are the long-term services that someone with an intellectual or developmental disability would access. DDA is through the Maryland Department of Health. These are they're long-term, and they provide. Actually, let's go right to the next slide. So some of the supports that DDA provides, they provide personal supports. They have employment services. This includes supported employment and customized employment. They have day services, day habilitation, community development services. They provide self-directed services. DDA does provide residential services, behavioral support services, and low intensity support services. The residential services provided through DDA, I can tell you there is a waiting list for those residential services. Folks usually get into the residential services if there is some sort of a crisis, and that would mean essentially that the caretaker can no longer, the parent caretaker can no longer take care of the child if something happens and the child or the adult is in a homeless situation. That's usually when DDA is going to provide residential services. So next slide. DDA has different waivers that folks will be placed into and enrolled into in order to access their services. Again, DDA services, I didn't mention this earlier, but DDA services usually with their community supports waiver and their community pathways waiver do not begin until the student is 21 years of age. So there are some cases where families can access services prior to 21, but usually services will begin at 21. They do have a family supports waiver that families can go into. The amount of families that get into that waiver is limited, so not everybody is going to be able to access services from the family supports waiver. Derek, can you just click on one of the community pathways waiver for me? Thanks. So this is a link from the DDA webpage, and it tells you these are the services that folks can access if they are enrolled in that community pathways waiver. And as the student gets closer to exiting, they will get a coordinator of community service, and that coordinator is sort of like that's your case manager. They're going to work with the family to come up with a person-centered plan. So you're going to look at that plan. That plan is going to be submitted to DDA, and DDA is going to help decide, okay, what waiver is that individual going to be placed into. And these are just some of the services that can be accessed through the waiver. And as you see, there are different types of residential, there are different types of support services, different types of employment services. And with each of these waivers, the family supports waiver, the community supports waiver, and the community pathways waiver. The community pathways waiver encompasses everything. So you have services that are in family supports, then you have services in community supports, and they just build So if you are enrolled in their Community Pathways waiver, then you're getting all of the supports that are offered through family supports and community supports. Next slide. So another partner of ours is the Behavioral Health Administration. So BHA is also a part of the Maryland Department of Health. And this is an agency that serves folks with a diagnosed mental illness or problems with alcohol and drug abuse. And then through the local agencies, core services, behavioral health administrations, some of the programs could include psychiatric inpatient care, residential treatment, outpatient care, crisis services. Those are some of the programs that are available. Our local agency that we work with, that we refer students to specifically, is Cornerstone Montgomery. And Cornerstone Montgomery has a transition-aged youth program. They have 2 programs within that transition-aged youth program. And they have their career transition program. It's short-term, and that is where we refer our second semester juniors or our seniors. And they work with those students on employment goals, on self-advocacy goals. So whatever the students' goals are, they work short-term with the students to get them ready to move into their next environment. And then they also, as part of another part of the transition age youth program, they have a longer term program that is their career academic and career academic psychological rehabilitation program. This is a program, it's for students or young adults that are 18 to 25. So this is something we might refer our seniors to. And they're supporting the young adults. They are trying to help them become independent within the community, independent within a job. They're doing career exploration. They're doing the self-advocacy instruction. And they're also helping the students look at what educational opportunities are out there. Cornerstone Montgomery does pair up with doors to, especially when there is, when the student is looking for work or maybe needs some job coaching on the job. So next slide. And next slide. So these are some of the things that are offered by the Transition Services Unit. This is specifically for parents and students. Some of the things that we offer. We do a transition information for parents and students night. We call it our tips night. And Derek, if you click on that link, there's a flyer that we do. And so we do several different nights. We do an adult services night, which focuses on, that's our DDA night. We did that last month, and that's, we had DDA come in and talk about the services they offer, how to apply. We talked about self-directed services, and we heard from the different coordinators of community service. And then coming up in December, we're going to have our college night. We will hear from the folks in disability support services. We'll hear about the graduate transition program and the challenge program. We'll have someone coming out and talking about financial aid, how to pay for college. And then we have a really nice presentation about the Montgomery College and University of Shady Grove pathways. We are also doing in February, we used to do our financial planning and guardianship meeting together, but we found that there is just so much information in both meetings. We've had to, this year we're going to separate them. So we have our financial planning meeting in February, and we'll have someone talking about the Maryland ABLE program, and we'll have someone presenting about pooled trusts, pooled special needs trusts. And also, we will be having our guardianship and supported decision-making night. This is always very popular. We're going to have an attorney come who will speak about how parents can pursue guardianship on their own. And then we'll have someone, another attorney, speak about the new supported decision-making process. And then the last meeting that we have in April, it's our doors night. And we have folks from our doors counselors come in and talk all about doors, application process, services that they offer, and programs that they have. And I can make sure I share this flyer with everyone, so folks can register for these meetings. This year they're all virtual, so I'll get the flyer out and you can register and join us the evening of the meeting. And then another activity that we have done for parents, for folks that are, for parents of our families of students with intellectual disabilities who are going to be going into the services with the Developmental Disabilities Agency. We do virtual adult provider visits. And the adult providers are the agencies within Montgomery County that provide that support, that provide those services that DDA offers. So for example, the ARC of Montgomery County, or Community Support Services, or Rehabilitation Opportunities, Inc. We have set up virtual visits for parents to come to these meetings, and the agencies, they talk about what they offer. They talk about the activities that they do with the clients. They usually give a virtual tour of the agency. And we do those visits with our families of our graduating seniors. So we did, for this year, we sent the information about that to our students that are graduating in 2023 and our students that are graduating in 2024. And then we are going to be doing, in March, we are going to be doing an employment readiness series. And this is specifically for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have guest speakers coming in talking about career exploration, getting ready for a job. And one of the nights, I believe, is going to be dedicated to talking about self-employment. And there are plenty of folks that are interested in having their own business. I believe it might have been last year, we had the young man who owns John's Crazy Socks. He presented at one of those nights. And then in May, we'll have our transitioning youth night, and that's for the families of students that are graduating in 2024. We will have the adult providers there, and this gives the families a chance to go and talk to the providers to, again, hear what types of activities they offer, and what types of services. Do they have transportation? Do they provide transportation? What does a typical day look like? And then in June, at the end of the school year, we do a transitioning youth 23 night. So that's for our students that are going to be coming out this year And we have folks from DDA and coordinators of community service. They talk to families about, okay, what's next? So your child is going to graduate on this day, and this is what's going to be expected of services. This is usually when services will start, and they're looking at exactly what that transition is going to be. So next slide. And then for students, we have several programs for students. We have an Exploring Careers program. And I did see in the chat that someone mentioned Sunflower Bakery. With our Exploring Careers program, that's really where we're getting students out into jobs and into paid and unpaid internships. We have partnerships with Kaiser Permanente. We have partnerships with Shady Grove Adventist Hospital, Walgreens, CVS, Sunflower Bakery, Gaithersburg Air Conditioning, and those are the ones off the top of my head. But we're trying to help students who are really interested in working find what they want to do. And so we have all of these partnerships that we are working with the transition support teachers to get students into some of these internships and jobs. And then for our students with intellectual disabilities, 18 to 21, we have an offsite program. And we refer to it as an offsite program because the programs are not located in school buildings. As I said, they're for students 18 to 21. We have a career community connections class. Oh, sorry, community and career connections, and we have transition training for independence. Our transition training for independence, or TTI program, those classes are located at Montgomery College. We have a classroom at Montgomery College at each one of the campuses, Tacoma Park, Rockville, and Germantown. And the students, that's where they go. They don't have a school bus. They are using public transportation. In our CCC program, the students do utilize a school bus, but again, it's not in a school building. We have one of the classes, our Down County class is in the Spring Mill Center in Silver Spring. Our Rockville class is at English Manor, which is one of the administrative offices for MCPS. And then our Up County class is located in the Up County Government Resources Center. And again, the students are, a majority of their day is out in the community. They are learning to use public transportation. They are working at least 3 or 4 days a week. Some of the students are in paid jobs. Some of the students are in volunteer jobs. And the focus is really on that independence and what it's going to look like when they leave school. So, next slide. And here are some resources that we listed. They're all linked, and the first link is the Transition Services website. And that has a lot of the information that it has the brochures Diane was talking about. It also has links to transition planning, and I think the tips that I believe right there. Yeah, I think the flyer. Oh, yes, the flyers are listed on there. And so if you do wish to register for any of those meetings, you can go to our website and click there, and that will take you to the flyer with the registration links. So we have a lot of information on our website.
And Margie, you're not going to be able to go through all of your different resources. So if you maybe just want to say a word or two about some highlights on that page, and we'll let folks peruse those.
Sure.
We want to give folks an opportunity to talk to you and Diane in the breakout room. So if you want to try to wrap it up, and then we'll shift over, and that way folks can have an opportunity to. We'll have about 15 minutes or so for folks to chat with you.
All right. So when you get a chance, please look at some of these resources. And next slide, I think that might be it. There's our contact information if anyone needs to get in touch with us. And next slide, I think we are at questions.
So we're going to have folks ask questions in the chat. I'm sorry, in the breakout session. Folks who are interested in speaking directly with you all or sharing some of the information that they've been sharing in the chat with each other, and then that way they can do it with Diane and Margie listening, so that they can add some clarification or anything to some of the comments. But what a wonderful wealth of knowledge, I mean, and wonderful wealth of information that was. A ton of information, and you don't need to feel like you have to memorize or take everything in at once. It is all in that presentation, and we will post that presentation. Derek does a great job of taking all of our presentations and putting them on the SECAC webpage. So you always have that to go back to, and you also have Margie and Diane's contact information. You have other folks like Mary Beth and Winter if you need help connecting with anything down the road. But this presentation itself is just a great encyclopedia of information with those links and everything. So that will be a great resource for you as your students get older, or if you have students that are already in those upper grades. So at this point, Derek, do you want to help us figure out how to transition to the breakouts? I see that breakout rooms are at the bottom there. So Derek, if we click on that, will that show us the 3 different rooms that you mentioned? One of them, if you came in late, I shared that presenters will be, the transition team presenters will be in one breakout. I will be in another if you would like to chat with me, and the co-chairs will be in another. Representatives from the co-chairs will be in the third.
That's correct. You should see on your panel below breakout rooms. It's an icon with 3 or 4 squares. So if you click on that icon, you can choose which of the 3 rooms that you'd like to enter in. Again, it's meet with the co-chairs, meet with the director, and meet with the transition unit.
Looks like there's already 3 people waiting for you, Margie and Diane. All right, I'm going to jump into my group. We'll see you guys there. And Derek, if you could bring us back in about 10 minutes, so around 8:57 or 8:58, and then we'll do some closeout remarks, and we'll say goodnight to everybody. Okay. And I know that we're almost at 9 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for being here. Zolfa, I know that you were in the middle of asking me a question when we had to return to the room. I'm sorry you didn't get to that, but if you could please, what I'll do is put in the chat my email address. If you could just email me, and we will schedule a time. I'll schedule a time to give you a call. Okay. So we'll go that direction, because I know that you had a burning question that you wanted to get to. And for everybody else, it's been, I'm sorry, I have trouble typing and talking at the same time. So for everybody else, if you would like to jump off at this time, and we'll turn, I'll make you the host, or who's the host right now, Jan? Are you the primary on this meeting, or is that Derek?
Yeah, Connie now has access.
Connie now has it. Okay, terrific. Well, thank you all for being here. And I especially want to give a big round of applause to Diane and to Margie. So thank you all very much for that incredible wealth of information. And again, it's all available for you in the SECAC webpage on that presentation. If you go to the link for the meeting tonight, we also will have a recording of this presentation available for on that site as well. And if you went to their transition services webpage, a lot of that information would be found there as well. And if you have difficulty getting in touch with any of those resources, I know Mary Beth was was just sitting there taking copious notes all night. And so she's going to help you get to whatever those resources are. She will certainly help navigate you. And if she doesn't know, she will find out with you. All right. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. And we will see you on December 14th back here with our superintendent, Dr. Monifa McKnight. Thank you all very much.